I'd like to call this meeting to order. Budget workshop, April 25th, 1 p.m. We have a nice big crowd here today. Everybody's excited. Everybody's wide open, got their eyes open, ready to get going. So without further ado, we'll get into our budget presentations.
Mr. Chairman, this is, I believe, your third budget workshop. And the lineup for today is general government. General government is back again because I think Commissioner Tobias said he still had some issues that he would like to address under general government. Also, I think Ian is here because we didn't finish the discussion, or at least the board discussion with regards to potential cuts over in Housing and Human Services. And so those are the two that you'll finish up today. And the lineup is court operations. The state attorney is here to give you a presentation. I think, Jill, are you doing court operations?
Judicial branch, and
okay.
That will be in
that'll
May.
be in May. So we have, with regards to courts, we have just the state attorney today. And then Parks and Rec was a holdover from the last workshop, and so we'll do Parks and Rec after the state attorney. Central Services, Information Technology, and the Medical Examiner and Veteran Services are two small programs that Mr. Golden will go over again. And so in terms of general government, the list that was presented to the board at the last workshop with regards to potential funding cuts were the My Region expense, National Association of Counties, the International City County Management Association, the Federal Lobbyists, the LEAD Brevard funding, the Historical Commission funding, which is a general fund expense, can actually be transferred to the library special district funding. The Employee Innovations Program, Lean Six Sigma, and in the general government, those were just the workshop expenses, and training for employees, the Executive Leadership Institute, 7 Habits, and LeaderCast. There was mention of a funding cut for the EDC. I think that was by a third. And then the last on our list was Brevard Cultural Alliance, and those are all general government expenditures that were mentioned as potentials at the last workshop. And so I think that's probably the best place to start, Mr. Chairman.
Sounds like a good place to start to me. Who do we want to have go first?
I don't know what the proposal is going to be from the commissioner, but I know there are a number of agencies here that would like to speak on those topics.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tobias.
Thank you. On a little bit of a reflection and seeing what we did with community-based organizations, while I didn't support necessarily that idea, I thought the approach was a wise one. So I went through and made a couple changes to some of these requested cuts. The example, a good example on the one that I'm handing out, I think the EDC I had down as a third. If we took a flatter approach and did it the same way that we did with CBOs, I changed it to 20%, and I think I did the same thing for the health department after speaking with many folks. So to make it a little more palatable and a way to transition into new potential funding sources. So that's the updated list that I'm handing you now.
This one?
That one, sir.
Yeah, this one. All right. Comments from the board? Since we don't have any buttons, raise your hand or something.
I think we may want to let public comments first. It relates to these. don't know how you can separate them out, but
Well, I think most of these are BCA, but yeah, we can just go through these. Yeah, well, okay, let's just do that. Kristen Baki?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Whitten. Good afternoon. I'm Kristen Baki, a Brevard County resident of District 2, and I'm the President and CEO of Lead Brevard. I'm here today representing Lead Brevard on behalf of the Board of Directors and the collective influence and leadership of that group. Several board members are present today. Lead Brevard is Brevard's leadership development resource. We identify, educate, and convene leaders into this community. Through our programming, we educate leaders about this community, its needs and challenges, and encourage them to use their time, talents, and treasure in civic engagement. As board members for local nonprofits, as philanthropists, and as leaders who step up and address the issues we all face in our community, we've been engaged in this work since the first class in 1986. Over 1,200 community leaders from a broad range of organizations, including NASA, all of Brevard's hospital groups, United Way and various nonprofits, local armed forces, local government, and several of your organizations' leaders are graduates of our flagship Leadership Brevard program. They'll continue to contribute to making Brevard among the best communities to live and work, while Lead Brevard continues to create the infrastructure of future leaders, as was the original intent of the community leadership 40 years ago. As fellow community leaders, our directors and our alumni have struggled with the continued action to cut funding to community-based organizations that support seniors, victims of domestic abuse, troubled youth, the hungry, special needs children, those contemplating suicide, and others who need assistance. The county has funded those programs in the past because the return on the investment was clear, and the value of the underlying public and private partnerships in which volunteerism and expertise is leveraged with other sources of funds is beneficial to the county government and all of its residents. Given the impacts of prior decisions, from a reduction in emergency food access to fewer at-risk youth receiving the benefits of a mentoring program, to over 5,200 fewer meals for the homebound elderly, and at a minimum over 7,300 calls made just to these CBOs seeking assistance for services that may no longer be available. Commissioners, these efforts and these organizations require more leadership and more public stewardship, not less. With that goal in mind, and with Lead Brevard's mission of working together to strengthen our community by inspiring others to lead, our Board of Directors values the decades-long collaboration with the county and takes pride in the value the county has relieved for our effort. Yet, they unanimously request that you shift county resources from Lead Brevard to directly maintaining and improving the human infrastructure of Brevard County. The best use of those funds would be to minimize the cuts to the CBO funding that occurred earlier this month. As you continue to lead county government through challenging times, Lead Brevard's programs and alumni will continue to inspire people to lead and address the broader challenges that face our county today and in the future. We, of course, look forward to any opportunity to work together constructively toward a shared future. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Stahl.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Stockton. I'm the health officer at the health department here in Brevard County, and I want to thank everyone for the partnership, promotion of public health in Brevard County. As part of Florida Statute 154, it does talk about the collaboration between county government and the county health department for primary care services, environmental health, and communicable diseases. So I did want to outline the money that we get from the county for those areas, $347,000. We use to support, partially to support Space Coast Volunteers in Medicine. Space Coast and Volunteers in Medicine is a volunteer primary care clinic, and in the last year they provided $2.2 million value of services. They're 100% volunteers. We support them with space, medical supplies and equipment, labs, and medical supplies. The second thing we do with the money is environmental health services. We use this money to provide services that's not covered by environmental fees. And some examples of these services are surveillance of blood testing for arsenic, lead, mercury, carbon monoxide, and pesticide poisoning, responding to complaints and sanitary nuisances such as raw sewage on the ground, failing septic systems, improperly functioning lift stations, improper garbage disposal, unsanitary complaints of homeless camps, and free-flowing wells. We will be approaching the Commission in several months to talk about approval for fees for penalties, for late penalties, for permit renewals, additional plan reviews, and re-inspections. Another area that this money is used for is communicable diseases, including STDs and immunizations. The STD program includes prevention, treatment, and outreach, specifically with teenagers, school children, and victims of sexual assault. Immunizations, we do have immunizations. I'm still going at all 3 clinical sites, Monday through Friday on a walk-in basis, and this does help school truancy, where children can get their vaccines and get right back in school. $95,000 that we get from you, we actually use for the indigent maternity program. Our maternity program has been nationally recognized. It is a public-private partnership, and we have 100% access to prenatal care here in our county. Lastly, $25,000 is used for the volunteer adult dental program. This, again, is a national program, and the money is used for coordination of volunteer dentists that come in for emergency dental services. And they turned around a value of $75,000 in the last year. In ending, we receive a county contribution ranked 57 of 67 counties. We are very appreciative of the money we receive and the collaborative partnership between the county health department and the county government to provide public health services to our citizens. Thank you.
Maria, did you say 57th out of 67?
57 out of 67, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I got a couple questions for you.
Yes, sir.
What would happen if, especially the Volunteers in Medicine Clinic, which I'm very familiar with, I was one of the founding members of that, what would happen with the funding if that's cut?
Okay. I know Audrey will be up here speaking also, so but I can assume 2 things would happen. And one, the emergency rooms would start to be a little bit flooded with people that don't have access to care. And as sad as it is to say, I think you will see some people dying, because they do a lot of management for the low-income diabetics and other issues, heart issues that are out there. So I think Audrey can probably answer a little bit better, but that's what I can see the biggest impact.
Okay, from an environmental health perspective, what would the impacts be with that? Well, I mean, there's programs that...
The big thing that would happen is some of these services I mentioned have to be provided, obviously, when we have sanitary complaints. But what would happen is there would be a longer delay in septic and well permits, because there's only X number of staff. So they do have to answer to the sanitary nuisances. So it would back everything up as far as permitting goes.
What about some of the sampling and things for different, like arsenic and things like that?
Yeah, we would still have to do that. We would have to do that probably before the permitting type things that would happen.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one question.
Commissioner Sabah, you have the floor.
Thanks. For the $300,000, I think we discussed this. This is an increase to, these are people outside of those that are covered by Medicaid, correct?
The $347,000, part of that money, not all of the money, but part of the money is used for Space Coast to support Space Coast Volunteers in Medicine.
So the safety net that the federal government provides out of Medicaid, those people, are getting
It's the
treated.
people that don't have Medicaid
But-
or private insurance
Okay.
and
So
need medical
those
care.
able-bodied adults, the large percent that have the ability to gain employment, but for one reason or another decide not to, those are the individuals we're speaking about, is
Well,
that correct?
Commissioner Tabaya, I would say maybe yes, some of that. I think the other thing is there's some people that do have jobs and are working, and I know there's several patients working 2 part-time jobs. They don't have health insurance, though, and they have the families that put them below this 200% poverty level. So I'm not sure that you can equate no job with no insurance, because it's not like that anymore,
But
but,
it's of at least 200% of poverty.
correct,
Okay.
yes,
You have to be below that, correct?
correct. Okay,
Thank you. Stephen Herron?
thank you. Hi there.
Thank you to the commissioners. I'd like to thank you for hearing me today. I'm the general manager and artistic director for the Titusville Playhouse. I'm here to appeal to you to maintain the arts funding for organizations throughout all of Brevard. Arts and theater, which is my specialty, adds to the community and quality of life that is needed to continue to attract families and business to our community. The arts adds a quality of life to families that they can find in other urban centers. If they cannot find it here in Brevard County, then they will seek neighborhoods and lifestyles in surrounding counties. I know that families will find residents in areas that offer arts and entertainment and then commute to our county for work if we do not offer options of that quality of life. Many of the new jobs relocating to Brevard County is bringing employees from much larger urban cities across America. So as we grow as a community, we have to compete and offer them a taste of what they are leaving. The funding for the county for the arts is vital in maintaining the diverse and ever-growing offerings that we have here in the county. To mention the economic impact that our organizations contribute, I can only speak for my small little organization. But my organization alone brings in 22% of our patrons from outside of Brevard County, with each one of those patrons buying gas, eating at a local restaurant, and about 1,200 heads in beds every year. Just for my small organization, that is over 10,000 people a year visiting from outside of Brevard. And that is not to mention the additional 33,000 locals that from across North and South Brevard that come in and still purchase food and gas every night just for an evening out. I would like to speak quickly about jobs that the arts bring into Brevard County. Again, I can only speak for my organization. Alone has gone from 1 employee 6 years ago to now we have 7 full-time employees with 2 part-time employees with over 120 contractors and independent directors that we actually utilize throughout each year. Lastly, I would like to express how support and funding from the county encourages and supports the arts in ways that you may not realize. It shows that you, as representatives of us the people, places value in our community for the arts. So please find it within your talks to maintain the current funding of the arts across Brevard and signal to everyone that yes, arts and culture is something that makes us as a society more interesting and well-rounded as a people. Thank you very much.
Audrey Joyner.
Hello, Commissioners and Mr. Whittington. I am Audrey Joyner. I'm the Executive Director of Space Coast Volunteers in Medicine. We are a 100% volunteer staff of medical and dental professionals, and we partner for the last 3 years with the Florida Department of Health right next door at the Vieira Clinic. Just want to let you know that what it means, you had some questions about Space Coast that Maria was trying to answer, is that to be eligible to be a patient at Space Coast Volunteers in Medicine, you must be a Brevard County resident between the ages of 19 and 65. You can have no insurance of any kind, no Medicare, Medicaid, anything, veterans, anything like that. and you must be at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. So indeed, I would say about 60% of our patients do work. Unfortunately, they can't find jobs, or they can't, due to child care reasons, have full-time jobs, but a lot of them work multiple jobs, but they don't work a full-time position that provides health insurance for them. Some of them just can't work due to their diabetes or hypertension or something like that. We started partnering with the health department about 3 years ago. We used to be down in Palm Bay, and they invited us to come up and occupy Clinic A there. And right now, we have about 63 volunteers who work that clinic, either inside, coming in and providing patient care, or support us on the outside, like a CPA that volunteers and does our books for us and that type of thing. So last year, our state report, we reported that from the 2015 to 2016, we did just over 4,700 patient visits last year. That's a combined number between our medical clinic and our dental clinic, and that state value was $2.3 million that we were able to provide thanks to the support of the Florida Department of Health, thanks to the support that you give them to run these programs. So the main thing that they help us with is a place to operate out of, and also they provide us with monies that provides us supplies to run our clinic, and also the big thing is they provide us with monies to be able to do laboratory testing, and that's a big thing. I'm also a nurse practitioner, and I've seen patients this morning before I came over here, and it is very difficult to treat someone for their diabetes or their hypercholesterol or whatever it is without having diagnostics to be able to treat them to see if the medical care that you're prescribing for them is working. So I would really be hampered by the loss of that support that we get from the health department. So I really appreciate it. I'm just here to say thank you, and that the funds that you're already providing, and I just want you to know, that equates to $2.3 million of services that was donated by a group of volunteers. So I thank you for your consideration today. Thank you.
Jennifer Floyd.
Good afternoon. I'm Jennifer Floyd, and I'm the Executive Director of the Healthy Start Coalition. As an organization that was written into statute in 1991, it states that we have to develop a system of care that gives access to all pregnant women in our community. We have done that, but in part by the health department. And as Maria said, your money gives good maternity care by the community health OBs, and from the assistance we give them as well. They service 1/3 of all pregnant women. Based on 2017 numbers, the county health department serve on average each month 63 clients in the 63 clients in the south area, 52 clients in the central area, and 23 clients in the north area, for a total of 138 clients per month. We have 15 OB offices throughout the county, 8 in the south area, 5 in the central area, and 2 in the north area. So based on the numbers in the geographical area, the county health department serves monthly 8 of the private OB offices. If the funding was cut in the south area, would have to see an additional 8 clients per month. They currently serve 22 per month. So that doesn't seem too bad. But in the central area, there's 5 offices, and they would have to serve 10 extra clients per month. They currently serve 20 now per month. That becomes tricky. Now, in the north area, there's 2 private offices. They would have to serve 11 clients per month, additional. They currently serve an average of 19 clients per month. That's where we become an issue as well. Is that really going to be realistic? In the south area, possibly, but in the central and north, maybe not. Then we become an issue with the drugs and opiates. We would deprive a pregnant woman without prenatal care if you cut funding for the health department. Many private OBs wouldn't serve after a client tested positive for the second time. The OB currently sends them to the health department. And what about the uninsured women? The county health department is the only office that serves them. That equates to approximately 2%, or 100 pregnant women. That doesn't seem like very much, but that's still 100 pregnant women. So you tell those women. Thank you.
Larry Nissen.
Thank you, Commissioners, for the ability to be here today and speak with you. I'm Larry Nissen. I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon with offices in Merritt Island and Titusville, a 32-year resident of Brevard County, District 2. I speak to you today regarding the volunteer adult dental clinic. In 1993, then Commissioner Sue Schmidt, Health Department Director Manuel Garcia, Larry Williamson, and myself, representing the Brevard County Dental Society, created an alliance with the three organizations to treat adults with dental problems that qualified under set guidelines through the health department at 100% of the poverty level. There's limited Medicaid dental services for adults, only extractions, full mouth extractions, and dentures to be provided. The county and health department each would provide $25,000 per year, and the Brevard County Dental Society $10,000 in the initial year to fund the coordinator for this program. The Dental Society provided the dentist that provided the care for free, and the health department the facilities. Initially, treatment was only done in the Rockledge facilities, but currently it's in all three facilities countywide. Many patients requiring specialty services were treated in private offices, with them not being asked to pay for these services. The program started slowly. There was a lot of doubts amongst our dentists. However, through the years, they understood this was a program that was extremely important. We continued with sovereign immunity, which was extremely important to them. And now most of our 200-plus Brevard County dentists have worked in this program, providing care for those who need it most. And yearly, as you heard earlier, between 150 and 400 patients are treated, with a value of between $75,000 and over $300,000 of dental care provided. The numbers vary due to the number of volunteers and the availability of dental assistants, which are often provided with grants that our director or coordinator, Chris Toulis, has secured throughout the years. Our program and Chris have received numerous awards statewide and locally for the community partnership that we've had for the past 24 years. This is a safety net for the dental needs of the citizens of Brevard. We cannot thank Chris Toulis enough, for she lives and breathes this program. She helps coordinate that, along with patients being referred to the dental program of Brevard Health Alliance, the Health First ER Diversion Clinic, and other faith-based programs, decreasing the burden, as you heard, on hospital emergency rooms. You may not know, but dental disease is a major cause of work and school absences, as well as hospital ER visits nationally. I thank you for your time and your service to this community. I ask that you keep the funding for the Volunteer Adult Dental Clinic, a unique and critical program, a small $25,000 investment for the county, a huge benefit for the citizens of Brevard. Thank you.
Shane Bergman.
Good afternoon, neighbors. My name is Shane Bergman, and I'm a Brevard County resident. I moved here in 2011 when the needs of the Navy had me assigned to the Naval Ordnance Test Unit. I separated after 9 years in 2015, and I made the conscious decision to stay in the area that I'm now proud to call home. I had options to work almost anywhere in the United States, but I chose to stay here in Brevard County because this is where I want to carve a legacy for my family. I've always had an interest in arts and culture, but haven't had the ability to get involved previously due to my mission schedule while serving our country. Now that I'm out of the military and have a somewhat normal schedule, I have made a priority of mine to get heavily involved in my community, primarily in the arts and culture sector. In 2015, I helped form 321 Millennials, a group of young professionals whose primary mission is to give back to the community that has served us so well. In the last 2 years, we have contributed to countless charities, helped strengthen our relationships and ties to our community leaders, and most importantly, started making the right choices to help deepen our roots in the area we love to call home. I'm here speaking today on behalf of my peers with an overwhelming concern for the future of our arts and culture community. I'm also a board member of Brevard Cultural Alliance, and I care immensely about our arts and cultural funding. It has come to my attention that the allocated funding from the General Operating Fund for BCA via the budget for our community-based operations is at risk, and this is very concerning to me and my peers. I'm here specifically to encourage your support for the the County Community Cultural Grant Program, Art in Public Places, and Brevard Cultural Alliance. I'm sure I've heard this before, but cultural organizations, small businesses, and individual entrepreneurs are critical to our economy. Not to mention the arts are a dynamic contributor to the business sector and help to attract and retain new businesses, key workers, and my people, the ever so trending millennials. The funds that are currently on the chopping block are a catalyst for local expenditures in excess of $7 million. These are art organizations purchasing goods and services that help local merchants thrive. Arts in Public Places specifically supports the work of individual artists and is an engine for the local arts market. I understand the pressing fiscal issues you're trying to address, and please understand these programs support your tax base, provide jobs, and are part of the solution to the county's programs. Arts and cultural funding should be viewed as an investment, not a handout. Any loss of funding will impact Brevard's trajectory to the quality of life that we all want and dream of, and thus could result in an economic impact we are not prepared for. Please reconsider your stance in our county CBOs and support the future of our beloved area by voting to keep the County Cultural Grant Program, Art in Public Places, and Brevard Cultural Alliance alive. And as a millennial would have it, I had to put a hashtag on this, and it's hashtag I didn't stay here for the roads. I additionally have an email that was sent to you guys this morning. He's an employer, but is a recruiter, and he could not make it, and he asked if I would read his letter on his behalf. With your permission, I will.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Dear Commissioners, I apologize for the late notice of this message. Unfortunately, due to the timing of this board meeting this afternoon, I am unable to attend. I've asked Shane Bergman to please read this email during your meeting to express my deep concern. I'm a Brevard voter and employed as a recruiter by a Fortune 500 company here in Brevard County. I've read about the recent budget cuts to county programs, and I'm deeply troubled by the direction the county is heading. Brevard County is in an incredible position compared to the rest of the county right now. The economy is booming as more and more engineering jobs come to the Space Coast. I write you today to ask for your support for the County Community Cultural Grant Program, Art in Public Places, and Brevard Cultural Alliance. I strongly believe it is a great disturbance to this county to pull funding from these county programs. I'm saddened to hear that funding has already been pulled from various programs in a 5-year phase-out. I cannot sit idly by while more budget cuts are considered. I recruit engineers from across the country to relocate themselves and their families to Brevard County. In making this major life decision to uproot themselves and find a new home here, I am asked a multitude of questions outside their day job. I am asked about quality of schools, cost of living, what there is to do in the area in the night, on the weekends, etc. Not once have I been asked, how are the roads? Brevard may be on the map as a Space Coast, but for young professionals across the county, this area does not jump out as the place to be. There are programs that I rely on to entice young engineers and their families to come to Brevard. These current and proposed budget cuts will decimate cultural programs for the sake of maintaining less than 5 miles of road. I understand that roads are a high priority item on the county's agenda. However, I believe it is extremely short-sighted strategy. I understand the pressing fiscal issues you're trying to address. Please understand these programs support your tax base, provide and attract jobs, and are a part of the solution to the county's problems. Arts and cultural funding is an investment, not a handout. Any loss of this funding will reduce Brevard's vibrancy and quality of life, which attracts and retains new businesses, key workers, and young professionals. To put it into perspective, my company is looking to hire 1,100 engineers in Melbourne each year for the next 5 years. By conservative estimates, if that's 65% of these engineers, that's 715, are hired outside of the county, an average engineer's salary is $85,000. This means that $60+ million per business and personal income will be generated in Brevard. The $60+ million will be spent on property tax, sales tax, local goods and services, etc. These are companies such as Northrop Grumman, Harris, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, DRS, Rockwell Collins, Embraer, Boeing, United Launch Alliance, SpaceX, Moon Express, and Blue Origin of 2018. I have a first-hand experience in the young engineers and the families turning down job opportunities because Brevard County cannot hold a candle to the cultural presence other metropolitan areas do. These programs that you are seeking to defund are already working to fix this infrastructure issues for you by attracting more young professional families from out of the state to contribute tax dollars to Brevard. They are a priceless asset to attracting further revenue that will solve your road problem in short order. I strongly urge you to reconsider your current strategy and would be happy as a concerned citizen in seeking alternative solutions. Thank you for your consideration and support. Sincerely, Max Cornick.
Jacob Stewart.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm in the column that's like dues and subscriptions and memberships, and it's for myregion.org. And Kurt, you and Jim know about this or would know about it, but 7 counties make up Central Florida, and those 7 counties, when we come together, are 4 million people, and this year we'll greet 71 million visitors. What we've worked on for 7 or 8 years now is to hold together this economy, a market, which is the 18th largest market in the United States. 4 million people, 86 cities, and 70 million visitors. So my region does that. Now my region kind of folds up into what's called now the Orlando Economic Partnership. It was the Central Florida Partnership. And just a few weeks ago, Kurt, we merged with the Orlando EDC and created a new organization. And it's designed to really shepherd the 7 counties. And so in that role, we work with Space Coast EDC and Team Volusia and CFDC and Polk, and of course the 4 areas of Central Florida. But let me just say this, because some of you, even folks here in the audience, don't understand sometimes how powerful Brevard County is. The 7 counties that we are dealing with are the 6 that touch orange. So orange is the flag because of population, and so it should have the largest economy. But of the other 6 counties, Brevard is the 2nd largest. And so each of the counties for 9 years have invested in this foundation called myregion.org, and then we have a series of programs that we drive to market. I have some literature here. I'm embarrassed to be in this situation without having properly introduced myself to many of you, but I do believe that the work that we're doing is hugely important, but I cannot say it's more important than some of the stories that I've heard. And so I'm a guest here today, but I'm not a guest in the region. I've lived here my entire life and believe immeasurably in our future. And so I've dedicated my profession to this, and I'm here to answer questions either now, Stockton, or whatever at a later date. All right? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Joe Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, I was sitting there thinking, who's going to follow Jacob Stewart? And I don't have a hashtag, and I'm not a numbers cruncher, so I'm at a real disadvantage, but my remarks that I prepared are really more personal, based on my own life experiences. I am also a volunteer board member of the BCA and the chair-elect for the coming year. When my wife and I were parents of young children, I remember struggling over our family budget. How to match limited resources with a seemingly endless list of both needs and wants. I was troubled and confused at times by this daunting challenge. As I was wrestling with what seemed like an almost hopeless dilemma, a friend offered me a piece of advice that helped anchor my future decision-making. By the way, it didn't magically produce more revenue, although I wisely made adjustments in my life to address that side of the agenda. Nor did it eliminate the sense of needs and wants that existed within my family. But for me, it did transform the equation and the choices that we had to make. Simply put, this is what my friend told me. Joe, your family is not building a budget, you are building a life. That changed my whole perspective. I started to think of my family's budget as a lifetime investment decision and the opportunities that it presented. Yes, there was a mortgage to pay, and there was food to buy and clothes to purchase, etc. But there was also a 401k for our future retirement. And there were funds to support the kids' education and something for family time or vacation. The return on those investments varied. Of course, they were financial in nature, some of them. Some brought joy of learning and a foundation for future career opportunities, while others paid dividends in eternal bonds of family love, joy, and happiness. Likewise, prudent investments in arts and culture and in the BCA as our designated local arts agency generate positive returns that are felt in multiple ways in our economy, in our quality of life, and in our future.
Joe, you have 30 seconds.
For example, the return on the investment that we make in the County Cultural Grants Program is $7 million spent here locally in our economy. We are able to generate grants from outside of our economy. Last year, $560,000, previously $1 million for local jobs and local economy and local tax base. We partner with the city of Titusville, with Palm Bay, in various efforts to regenerate those communities and build a sustainable economy that matches and aligns with their particular quality and character. And we work with the schools.
Time's up.
Time's up. And we work with the schools in the future. Those are the things that we believe will be lost. That's the legacy that I think we want to leave to the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dolores Spearman.
Hi, my name is Dolores Spearman, and I'd like to thank you for letting me speak today. I've been here for 67 years. That's my age. I was born and raised here. But I would like to talk to you about the Brevard Cultural Alliance today, the designated local arts agency. BCA manages your Arts in Public Places program, a program that supports artists. Yes, it does, but it also drives businesses such as galleries, printers, picture framers, and art supply stores, who all purchase goods and services that help many local merchants thrive. This program has become a part of the local business economy and directly benefits a considerable number of entrepreneurs and businesses. Yes, the program was originally set up by the county commissioners to support artists, but the Brevard Cultural Alliance manages it as a resource to also help support entrepreneurial jobs and contribute to the county's tax base. This program really isn't about arts. It's about contributing to jobs and local economy. I thank you for your past support and your consideration today. Thank you.
Danielle Jewett.
Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and commissioners. I am from AMI Kids. My name is Danielle Jewett, and I'm here to talk to you about the Brevard Cultural Alliance. AMI Kids is a residency program for boys that's here in Space Coast in Melbourne. We service 30 youth that have been sent to us by a judge. They live with us 6 months to a year, sometimes more. Part of the program that we provide for them, though, besides counseling 7 days a week, school 5 days a week, no summer vacation, no 2 weeks in summer, is to provide the experiential challenges and lessons, art. Brevard Cultural Alliance provides part of our program for us. They have had videography classes, photography, artists, drumming. They keep the kids with that rounded program that they need to get away from what they were doing, their troubled past, and to hopefully have a brighter future. So what we stress at our school is education, and part of our education is the arts. So without Brevard Cultural Alliance, we would be missing part of our program. So I really do hope that you reconsider. If you expose the kids to more, they have more opportunities. They have more to look forward to once they leave. One of the things we push at the school is their GEDs if they're old enough. They do laundry there, they do lawn care there once a week, they do everything there so that they hopefully leave as a more rounded person. The arts is one thing we need to stay there if possible. So please reconsider Brevard Cultural Alliance. Thank you.
Holly Carver.
Hi. I'm Holly Carver. I'm a resident of District 1 in Brevard County. Many of you will recognize me as Commissioner Fisher's aide. I feel like I'm at Old Home Week here. Robin obviously is no longer commissioner, and I'm no longer an aide. Now I'm enjoying success as a businesswoman in our community, and as that business person, I want to talk to you about business, economy, and jobs. 5 years ago, Robin and our Mayor Tully founded the Greater Titusville Renaissance, called GTR, in order to address the negative impact when the manned space program finished. It hit Titusville hard. Not as hard as the 60 Minutes suggested, but hard nonetheless. GTR was set up as a catalyst for business development to improve how the city looked and to use art and culture to reposition the perception of the north end of the county and to contribute to regeneration. Robin asked Brevard Cultural Alliance how this could be done. Their response was to jump in, full on and all in. They devised an initiative which engaged our community, gave us a sense of civic pride, and a sense of place, which over the coming years streamed literally thousands of people through galleries held in vacant storefronts of downtown. People saw those spaces and saw the potential for great vibrancy, and the result is that now those vacant storefronts are businesses once again. It was never art for art's sake. It was using art to create regeneration, jobs, and business. This puts money in the people's pockets, puts money into our county tax base, and helps you with the budget problems you have to deal with in a growing and sustainable way. And that has a real positive impact when it comes to jobs and the community. My ask is that you keep the funding and the budget whole for the Brevard Cultural Alliance and encourage them to do even more of this for our county. Reducing and eventually removing funding to community benefit organizations increases your obligation and expense when those people aren't cared for. And removing funding to the arts has a ripple effect that reduces our revenue and our future sources of funding. Thank you.
Eric Parent.
No show.
Lea Sorenson.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for your dedication and your time to keeping Brevard great. And we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Lea Sorenson, and I'm the current director of VSA Florida of Brevard. And we are an art program with the Brevard Achievement Center located in the main office in Rockledge. We provide art programs for students and adults with disabilities here in Brevard. For 30 years, VSA has been present here, impacting thousands and thousands of students with disabilities. We also, through BAC, have a program where we provide art programs for adults with disabilities. And what we wanted to do, we know you've heard lots of numbers and you know the data and the statistics and the impact of a flourishing cultural arts programs, you know, in our county and how it draws people here. We brought some faces for you so that you could see some of the people that are directly impacted by the decisions that you all make here in the near future. I'll introduce to you, this is Courtney.
Hi.
And she wants to tell you, Courtney performed in our Performing Arts Showcase that we had last year, which I want to invite you all to attend this fall when we have our next one. We hold it at the King Center, one of our collaborators. Courtney, do you want to talk a little bit about your dance?
I've been doing dance. What's his name?
Marty.
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 I dance. Because Dan, I took everything, whole thing done.
On the stage, in front of an audience. And Miss Marty is a local artist, a performing artist here in Brevard that we hire. We hire artists to do residencies, to come and work, so we provide a professional quality to what we offer.
Yep.
Cheryl, would you like to say something about your work in the Cogswell studio? How about selling at the Cocoa Village Craft Show? Do you like to work there?
Yes.
And sell the artwork that you guys make in the studio?
Yep.
Okay. And
Rosie.
Rosie, did you bring your art? Do you want to show a picture? She carries her sketchbook with her. And when she's not working, she creates. Can I hold it up? This is an example of her abilities and what she can do. And without an art program, we may not know that she has this hidden talent. It's a gift, right? Okay. And Eddie, would you like to say a few words?
All right. I like to do art and making different cat stuff, like cat stuff, making cat stuff.
Animals.
Animals.
He likes to make animals.
Animal stuff.
Yes, very nice. Thank you.
Andy?
And Andy, did you want to say a few words? So we're here. We're recipients of a small grant through the Brevard Cultural Alliance. We piecemeal our budget together so that we can keep this program going, this long history here in Brevard. And we want to grow, too. So it's real important to us that you all at least maintain the current level of funding that you provide for BCA. And so we thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Gerald Bird.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Stockton. My name is Jerry Bird. I'm an oral and maxillofacial surgeon. I've practiced in downtown Cocoa since 1983. In 1993, 24 years ago, we signed an agreement with the Brevard County Health Department and the county to develop the Brevard Dentist Care Project. It was a joint effort between the three of us. As Dr. Nissen mentioned, it was a little slow getting going, as you can imagine. We had to get our membership to agree to pay $10,000 of our society's dues towards this project, and then get them interested in leaving their offices and going to one of the county health department dental offices to practice. So, as you can imagine, it's very difficult for a dentist to leave their office. A little easier for a physician. All they need is a stethoscope and a prescription pad and a few other odds and ends, something to draw some blood and tongue blades. And you know what's in your dental office: computer systems, radiology equipment. They're like a mini ER. And so through time, we were able to gather more volunteers to work in all three locations within the county. This is part of a statewide program. There are 39 counties that have a Project Dentist Care program. Your investment each year is $25,000. Over the last 24 years, we have provided hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of free dental care through the length of this program. Probably about 12 years ago, I'm thinking, Dr. Heshmati had a dinner for all the volunteer dentists, and basically we received an award from the state and the county, and also Congressman Posey, who came to acknowledge the fact that we provided so much free care over those years, and we continue to do that. So our concern is the $25,000 that you all supply, and Chris Toulis, who runs our program, uses this funding for outreach, supplies, education, clinic coordination, keeping volunteers protected under the sovereign immunity, and scheduling our volunteers with patients who desperately need the care. It's a pretty small amount to get the kind of care that these patients get. And
Jerry, you have 30 seconds.
okay, thank you. And if these patients do not get dental care, they end up in our local hospital ERs, which they cannot receive any dental care in the hospital, and quite honestly, what's given is antibiotics and pain pills, and they get on a continuous cycle where that happens time and time again. So we'd like you to consider keeping the $25,000 for our program so that we can continue to volunteer. Thank you for your time.
Tony Colomberti.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, County Manager. As a Brevard resident since 1994 and a Brevard voter since 2005, I stand today in support of the County Community Cultural Grant, Art in Public Places, and the Brevard Cultural Alliance. Infrastructure means little when a community lacks the vibrant impact of arts and culture. Not only does this creative deficit rob us of an important sense of regional identity, if the board follows through with its plan to cut funding for the CBOs, it will also rob the Space Coast of $560,000 in matched grants, $7 million spent locally through BCA-managed cultural grant programs, and an important tool to attract and retain millennials, an important demographic block, soon to be the largest consumer group in the nation, as well as many of our new neighbors moving to work in our high-tech and defense industries. If these cuts were applied to deferred maintenance class roadways, we would only be able to improve less than half a mile of the 734 miles of eligible roadway. It is not conducive to building a better Brevard to cut funding for programs that benefit the whole of our county in order to fix less than half a mile of roadway in an area of 1,016 square miles. With the immediate benefits of a diverse and active cultural asset aside, one example of the dividends paid by Brevard's support of the arts includes programs for youth at risk of offending, which helps to reduce juvenile delinquency rates, further reducing costs to the county in form of law enforcement, court services, corrections facilities, as well as helping to build productive, contributing members of our local community. As a business owner, member of the 321 Millennial Organization, board member at Green Gables at Historic Riverview Village, and part of the next generation of Brevard's leaders, I appreciate the arts and culture throughout our whole county, and I hope as commissioners you share the position and thus are willing to reconsider your stance on the proposed funding cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Winston.
Thank you, Commissioners. A lot of my colleagues have already made great points about the economic impact of the arts, and I'm not going to try to compete from those wonderful folks from Very Special Arts. We do host that at the zoo every year. But I want to make one point, and I want to tell you a little story that I hope might be helpful and influential. That one point is I've had two other stops in the zoo world, in Providence, Rhode Island, and in Chicago. Providence, Rhode Island has old money, deep pockets, generational giving. People there regularly give 6-, 7-, 8-figure gifts. You can up that in Chicago, where you occasionally see 9-figure gifts. Those communities, despite all the wealth, despite people who support the arts, they still have city-based organizations that support the arts, because there are parts of what these organizations do that just aren't picked up through charity. And having worked here for over 12 years, I can tell you it's not going to be picked up by the private sector. There just isn't the funds here to do that. So when you cut today, if you cut today, it goes away. It's not coming back through private money. It's not going to happen here in this community. And here's a story I wanted to tell you. My father, who recently turned 92, was an accountant for one of the big 8 accounting firms. And he was not the guy who did the taxes. He was not the guy who did the audits. They sent him for new clients to sort of assess the basic business operations. And he'd go away for these 4 or 5, sometimes 2-week trips to these companies all over the country. And he'd come home, and I'd watch his face when he came home. And I could tell right away what he was going to say. If it was a well-run company, he'd have a smile, take off his shoes, and we'd talk about baseball. If it wasn't so well-run, he'd come home, we'd have a drink, and he'd always say, penny wise and pound foolish. And then he'd talk about the ways that company wasn't addressing the true issues at hand, but was making little tiny cuts here and there to try to avoid the ugly truth. And I think that's what we're seeing going here. We have a great history, you have a great history of facing things head on, making big, bold decisions, letting the community weigh in, as we did with the lagoon tax last year, and voted to fund the change. And so when I see all these little cuts and little programs that isn't facing the ugly truth, it's just taking away that quality of life. And my father would say the same thing about these companies. He would say, ultimately, the point of those companies was to give return to the investors. And in those companies, it was dollars. So saving a little here, a little there, that's not going to come out over the thousands and tens of thousands of investors. In the case of Brevard County, it's quality of life. That is the return to investors. That is what we pay our money for. Quality of life includes safety and security, includes roads, but includes so many other things that you hear about. And if you're cutting here and there quality of life to add something back, I'm not seeing any net gain. I'm certainly not seeing any net gain bringing people into the county, not in the economics. There's no net gain there. You're not helping us, the investors. So I encourage you to be big and bold. Look at the real root problems here. And if we want to fix the roads, let's find a way to really do that, not by nipping and tucking over here. I think we can do it. I've seen all of you do that before. And I think that's the next step that has to happen. Otherwise, my father's going to grab another drink and sigh again. I just don't want to hear that. So thank you very much.
Matt Susan.
Thank you, County Commissioners, for having us up here and giving us the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, County staff. I was coming as a board representative for BCA to speak to the funding that you guys are proposing cutting. I am representing myself as a school board member, not the school board in general, and I wanted to talk to some of the programs that the BCA does for us currently. We have over 6,000 students that are focused in Title I funded schools that are provided after-school art programs that will be cut. I asked district staff 3 days ago if they were able to write the grants that the BCA does in case this funding is gone, and they're not able to because of the broad reach that they have. So we would be losing those 6,000 kids that have the after-school programs, and also we have artists that come inside of our schools and work hand in hand with our teachers that are local artists that draw the kids out. As a former teacher, I will tell you that the only thing that keeps these kids off the streets and keeps them working towards a curriculum is having something else sometimes besides the school that they're working towards. Now, I also wanted to let you know, besides the BCA and besides the funding, I'd like you guys to know that we are looking at selling a lot of our vacant property over there at the school board. We directed staff to give us a list on Friday of the current ones that we can sell, and we would look for you, and I just talked to Stockton about it. We have many pieces of property that have county leases sitting on them. Stockton was aware of the one that we have in Cape Canaveral that's near the ocean. If you guys broke those, we could sell those, and then you guys could receive the tax benefits for those. And some of them we have leases on that are your property. So we could do that to offset some of the funding for you guys for future use. I want to say thank you. Have a great day.
Libby Donahue.
You guys ready for a stretch or anything before I start? I'm Libby Donahue. I'm a 31-year resident of Brevard County. The first year I lived in Titusville. The last 30 years I've lived in Melbourne. And for the last 30 years I've also operated a small business. We have 16 employees, and we have a couple of contracts with county government. Like other small businesses that you do business with, that you outsource various work, we have similar kinds of expenses: employees, payroll, taxes, utilities, IT, all those kind of things. What makes us a little different is that we're a nonprofit corporation, and that makes us different in two ways. It means that during times where we have been renters of the properties that we inhabit, we pay property taxes, but during times when we have owned or paying a mortgage on property, we don't pay property taxes. But the bigger difference is that, unlike a commercial business or for-profit business, our revenues do not accrue a net benefit to an owner or shareholders. The revenues are used to provide services in the community. And in the case of our contracts with Brevard County, 100% of the revenues are used to provide services. There's no overhead taken out or any other kinds of expenses. Now, because I had the opportunity to meet or speak with you and your staff over the last week, you'll remember because I know you all have great memories, that we had over 64,000 contacts that we managed last year, about 42,000 via telephone, the rest through our online database. And we did that at a cost of about 6 cents for every adult over 18 in Brevard County. And so you know the facts and figures, we've talked about that, but like Ms. Sorenson earlier, although not as effectively, I want to remind you that all of those contacts represent real people. I'm just going to give you 3 examples. One would be the middle school student who called us a couple of weeks ago considering suicide. One would be the middle-aged woman who called us a few weeks ago to thank us for intervening in her suicide attempt. That resulted in a hospitalization that uncovered a primary health care problem that was actually the cause of the symptoms that led to her considering suicide. So she called to thank us. And the other is a call we had last week from a couple in their 80s who have found that the trailer that they've lived in for 20 years, the trailer park that they live in, is being sold. They've been told they have to leave. They can't move the trailer because it's too old. They can't move because they're too old, quite frankly. They have some health problems. They have no children. They have no family members, and they don't know what to do. They have a limited pension and Social Security. Those are 3 examples of over 64,000 contacts that we deal with 24 hours a day, including during Hurricane Matthew and those kind of things. As a taxpayer here, I feel like that's a pretty good return on my 6 cents. I hope you feel the same. Thank you.
James Antoon. Okay, that's the last of the cards. Yours, Vince, is for parks, which we haven't gotten to yet.
Well, I thought it was, I didn't realize that. I mean, I was
If you want to speak now,
Yeah.
be my guest.
My topic is parks, but it goes a bit broader than that. I'm Vince Lamb. I'm a Merritt Island resident for 44 years. I'm a frequent user and a big advocate for Brevard County Parks and Recreation, including the Environmentally Endangered Lands Program. I serve as Vice Chairman of the Procedures Committee for the EEL program. First, I want to state my strong support for the proposed budget for Parks and Rec. This organization operates quite frugally and has amazing employees. As one example, Brandon Smith of the Riverwalk Nature Park in Rockledge was invited to the Obama White House for his excellence in environmental education. That was in 2015. The Barrier Island Center has received a grant from the Sea Turtle Conservancy to provide transportation funding to bus students from low-income neighborhoods to learn about the ecology of the beaches in Brevard County. A shocking number of these students have never been to the beach. Many more impressive examples can be found on the recreational side of our parks as well, I'm sure. I have a friend who retired here after spending most of his career in Austin, Texas. After attending the first of the budget workshops here a few weeks ago, he commented to me the taxes were higher in Austin, but the delivery of services by municipal and county governments was clearly higher. With this commitment to quality of life, Austin, Texas has attracted and retained businesses like IBM and is also considered a major entrepreneurial center. I support and applaud the responsible county government that I've watched here during the Great Recession and the recovery from this painful period. However, many indicators show that the Great Recession is over and that our local economy has rebounded. I think we need to rise above the continuing hunt for government waste and establish a different vision. How can we make Brevard County the best place to live and work in Florida? I'm tired of seeing the can kicked down the road on infrastructure expenses. I don't know how much of the problem could be solved by the available 3 cents of local option gas tax, but I feel this option is too important to ignore. I keep watching these hunts for wasteful spending that could be looking for money to fund local road construction. Lots of energy has gone into these hunts for waste, and the results have not been very significant. The conditions of our roads are awful. I ride a road bicycle, and I know many potholes. I heard that Brevard County is rated number 2 in the nation as the most dangerous municipal area for bicycles and pedestrians. This needs to be fixed. I would feel safer if we could move down the list to maybe number 50. Like many seniors in Brevard County, I have no idea if I've saved enough money in my career to live comfortably for the rest of my life.
Vince, you have 30 seconds.
Okay. While I want taxes kept low, I was among the 62% of the voters who approved the sales tax increase to restore the lagoon. I feel the local option gas tax provides an opportunity to fund the road maintenance by charging the users. With crazy fluctuations in gas taxes, I doubt most people would notice. My most important message is that we are unlikely to achieve excellence by being cheap. We might even lose our status of being a good place to live if we continue to focus on being cheap. As you ponder the decisions associated with the upcoming budget, please focus on preserving and maybe even improving the quality of life in our county by spending the taxpayers' money wisely. Thank you.
Aaron Collins.
Hello, everyone. How are you? I want to thank you for your time today, so I appreciate it. I'm here on behalf of the Brevard Cultural Alliance. My name is Aaron Collins. I'm the conductor artistic director of Space Coast Symphony Orchestra. I'm also on the board or serve in some artistic capacity with 9 other organizations here in Central Florida. And just want to tell you just a little about Brevard County in general. First off, we have the most music organizations of any county here in Florida. That's just music. I mean, we have 4 world-class theaters. We have 3 incredible orchestras. We have bands, choruses, and all kinds of amazing things happening here in Brevard County. And that's just a small microcosm of what's under the umbrella of the Brevard Cultural Alliance. You've heard some stories today, and there's just many powerful and incredible groups doing amazing things under the Brevard Cultural Alliance. Now, the Brevard Cultural Alliance is a great advocate. In my opinion, the strongest advocate for arts here in Florida. They do so much for us, and their funding is very important to all of us. We all get a small sliver of that funding, and our programs are in need of this funding. Not only does arts drive tourism, drives the economy, helps local businesses, $25. Each person that comes to one of our concerts spends $25 at a local business outside of our concerts. So we have all kinds of great benefits to the economy, not only just the intrinsic benefits that everyone in this room here takes on every day. I hope you all will support the Brevard Cultural Alliance. How about we make no cuts? That's best, I think, if that's easiest. I certainly appreciate the challenges you all have, but we certainly hope you will support the Brevard Cultural Alliance and all of the great things all of these organizations do here for our county. And I thank you very much for your time.
Okay, now that's the end of the cards. Unless Bo Platt, who put down Parks budget, would like to speak now.
Well, actually, I'm the guy Vince was referring to that moved here from Austin. I grew up here in the 50s and 60s, and then lived in Austin, Texas for a little over 30 years. And Austin was fantastic. Travis County and the city of Austin had very forward-thinking government officials that invested heavily in the city and the county. And during the 30 years I lived there, it became a boom town. It's the Silicon Valley of Texas. It attracted Dell Computers headquarters, Whole Foods headquarters. Thousands and thousands of young, educated professionals moved there to work there and enjoy the quality of life. So I retired about 4 years ago, and at that time I got into sales, and what I was selling was Brevard County, and I was selling it to my wife, who was in love with Austin. And so I put the pitch on her. I had started about 10 years earlier because I always knew I wanted to come back here. I love the water and the parks, the nature here. And I beg you to continue funding the EELS program, the Parks and Recreation, but also the arts, things like that, like some of the previous speakers. The people come here for they don't come here for I didn't tell my wife, come back here because the roads are nice and straight. I told her because we've got beautiful beaches, parks, you can love the environment, and that's what brings people here. So I hope you'll, follow the lead of some other progressive cities, forward-thinking cities, and invest in the infrastructure, protect our environment, keep the parks. Things like charging for beach parking, that hurts the people that need it the most, and charging admission to parks. Let's keep it open for everybody and, in fact, enlarge them. Thank you.
Okay, now that's the end of my cards. Okay, pleasure of the board. We covered general government and parks and recreation. Do we have any other speakers does staff want to speak to parks and recreation?
Well, Parks has their presentation. I mean, Commissioner, Mr. Chair, you have a list from Commissioner Tobias of proposed cuts. I don't know how you want to process through that, but I think probably the state attorney would like to get out of the room fairly quickly.
I don't blame him.
So
can I go with you?
So I don't know if you want to jump ahead to him.
Yeah, let's do that.
And then come back to the list, and
Yes.
Parks and Rec will
Phil.
present after that.
Commissioners, County Manager, and staff, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I'm really here just to kind of answer some questions, if you have any. I appreciate the work of the staff, and we've worked very close over the last many years to try to keep our budgets relatively flat. In fact, I was doing some calculations over the last 6 years. The budget's only been an increase of 1.5% approximately. As we all know, technology costs especially have continued to increase. The workload that technology demands has only increased, and so it's been good that we've been able to keep our IT budgets and communication budgets relatively flat over those 6 years. In fact, it's increased so much the demand on our office, we've actually hired another full-time position that we internally just to handle all the technology issues on top of the positions that you finance. In addition, over the last year, I know that we have worked very closely with the county to reduce services or expenses in the county budget on our sexual assault victim services program, 250% decrease in that program. Tyler Soroy in my office worked with county staff, worked with the hospitals, worked with the Women's Center this last year to transfer those services from a county-funded program to the Women's Center, taking over that program. They stepped up, and without any reduction in services, we were able to have a pretty significant reduction in costs to the county without sacrificing the great work that they do. And I know Mr. Whitten and his staff and helping us do that, because that was a program we did not want to see to be reduced. But other than that, it's a pretty simple budget, and we appreciate the services that you provide for us.
What do you see coming down the road that will be an expense?
What I see coming is going to be a huge increase in our technology needs down the road. We've been very fortunate in Brevard that a lot of our departments have not yet gone to a lot of body cams. A lot of that evidence, we've got a few that are experimenting, but that's going to be probably the one issue that we're all going to have to deal with down the road. Just because of the demand that's going to cause when you have so much video evidence and you have so many attorneys accessing that videos, whether it's in the cloud or whatever. I know, and IT is not one of my strong points, and I know there's some IT people here that probably explain it much better than me, but when you talk about pipelines and the ability for many attorneys to be streaming at the same time, that's where the impact's going to be, and especially with body cams. In Seminole County, just a few departments that have gone that way are creating thousands and thousands of videos that are coming into our office that our attorneys are having to stream, and that's going to be a huge impact, I think, down the road. Probably the biggest.
Mr. Dwyer?
Thank you. You mentioned that sexual assault was down quite a bit. Is that what you mentioned?
No,
I'm sorry.
the cost to the county. It used to be, BASE used to be a county-funded program in partnership with our office from very early on, because there just really wasn't those services being provided. And the county actually, through general revenue, I believe, and some of the other court fees, had about 4 positions that the county was paying. We're down, basically with this new partnership, it's reduced it down to 1 position that the county funds. We fund 1 position internally. And so that was a huge savings for the county, without any drop-off, in services. And we were very fortunate the Women's Center were able to pick up and run with it, provide unfortunately, some of the grant programs. Every year the grants seem like they get more difficult to apply for, and one of the components was a mental health component. The county or somebody, we would have had to add some mental health counseling, which would have the cost would have just been astronomical for the county. And so the Women's Center has that component, so we were able to transfer those services.
Thank you, Mr. Archer.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a list of that you've compiled, Mr. Dwyer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You want to go through these? Do you have anything that you would like to say in particular on any of them?
I think he's... I have that one as well. Did you get the new one I updated just a little bit? And I'd be glad to go over any of them, in detail as far as rationale. But I did amend from last time, for full disclosure, the EDC from 1/3 down to 20%. And I think every dentist in Brevard County called me at least twice this weekend, including my college roommate, who is an orthodontist in the area, discussing the services that they provide and the fact that that is not a Medicaid eligible expense. And I also do want to, it puts me in a little bit of a precarious position. I'm putting forward lots of budget cuts, and to leave that alone would seem a little bit self-serving. In full and utter disclosure, my brother is an OB-GYN that is does a little bit of work with the health department there as well. So, to make all these cuts to services and leave the one that my brother, and he gets a small percentage of his salary from that, would be disingenuous. So,
well, before we get into the minutia of that, does anybody have any general comments from what we've just heard here? Any of the fellow board members have thoughts?
I'd just like to go back to what we made a decision on the last, I think it was the last budget meeting. And what we said would be no service cuts. We said no service cuts. We said that we wanted to get raises, work to get raises for our people. And we also said that we'd adopt the road plan where we get over 55 miles of roads paved. And I think those are things we voted on, and we said that's what we want to do. So any decisions we make, we've got to look at it in that frame of mind, that we are not impacting our service levels that we provide now. So
I'm guessing by the time we're done, we're going to have adequate revenues to possibly fund this budget. And I think what the work Commissioner Tobias is doing is trying to find extra funds for roads with the direction of the chair. Just a couple things I'm thinking through, because I would like to maintain current service levels, and I think our first step of what we did of stopping, creating more of the red zone on the roads, I think it was a great feat for this year's budget. I think we're going to have to continue coming up with ideas into the future to get rid of the backlog. But a couple of things, I've been involved in government for 6 years, and I haven't never been involved with government since it hasn't been going through a very hard time. And we've gone through excessive budget cuts through the government. You've gotten rid of a lot of staff, and the budget's already gotten pretty tight. And so I'm thinking we don't really have so much of a spending problem as much as we have as a revenue problem still. And we've got to work on ways to increase the revenues. And if we keep biting and devouring everything we have, we're not going to have nothing left. So I think we're going to have to figure out ways of how to generate revenues to increase the budget. The only way we're going to get more revenues is with new businesses moving in and new families moving in, which move into houses. Or the only other way to get new revenues is to consider user fees taxes such as gas taxes or public service taxes, which all of the incorporate areas, all of the areas that are corporated pay, but none of the incorporated residents pay currently, and I'm not so sure that's so fair. So these are things we should probably talk about into the future to fix the backload of roads, because we've got to look at those. But if we're in a time of growth, which I believe we are, what a great crossroads as a county, and we can decide whether to continue with growth or to pass it up and let everybody move everywhere else. I happen to be a mother of millennials, and I had a couple of my children move away, and I got a millennial on my staff. I pick his brain all the time. And where they're moving to right now is places that have these types of services, arts, they have quality of life, and they have opportunities and jobs. And at the chair's direction, I think fixing the roads was a problem we had to fix. From the accounting standpoint, what goes into my head, we got to quit creating excess debt, and that was creating debt. But I think jobs and opportunities are still our priority, and getting these things up to where they need to be a competitive county in the United States of America. So although I think that if there is an area where I think we are not being frugal and we're wasteful and it's not producing, we need to get rid of it. But these services right now, because they've been chopped up for 6 years, I'm not real sure there's much left in them. And I think if we get rid of them down the road, it's going to cost us funds. And I love the phrase, kick the can down the road. Well, we've already done that. And part of that problem is that cap we have on our budget, because I think that's kind of what's picked off our road situation, because we haven't been able to operate like normal governments do, to make minimal adjustments in our millage to take care of the road issues. Now, I think we're in a healthy budget year. I think we're going to have to come up with some creative ways to produce revenues into the future to fix the backloads on the roads. And that's going to come from new families, new businesses, or maybe we need to look at some user fee taxes.
Commissioner Nardi.
Where to start? I mean, I would disagree, at least in the sense where, to be okay with the entire package is saying that you agree with everything that we're funding. It doesn't mean that, you just slash and eliminate, especially some of the services that we're providing that, that deal with health and safety, because that goes under that whole umbrella, I think, of what we're supposed to be doing as a community. Now, a few of these things, I have a little bit of experience with, because I do have a history, not just as a representative, but as a resident of Brevard County for a very long time. So, I don't know if the answer is to go through each one of these, but I know that if I'm able, and I don't want to pick on an organization, but I'll just pick a round number, if I'm able to even find $60,000 worth of something that we're doing that can fund the cost of an officer, even a nutritional program like the Meals on Wheels program, the CBOs that we're getting hammered for reducing over, when we're not reducing them this year, by the way. That's the piece of misinformation I think that's out there. But that's the one that we go back to. So maybe our focus needs to be more on, at least when it comes to the CBOs, but our focus needs to be more on nutrition, safety, that sort of thing, rather than transportation for a charter school. Like, maybe we need to set our focus on what we're supposed to be doing. Now, I have experience with the BCA. I know Neil very well. I don't have coffee with him weekly or anything like that, but so I know not just what they do in the community, but how many different areas that they reach. It's not just about, art on a wall somewhere. It's about the impact on the community, the employment opportunities, the outreach with the schools. And, it's funny, you can talk to anybody and they have an experience with the BCA. You'll say, oh, I remember this, or oh, I remember that, and whether it be 5 years, 15, 20 years ago. And I can think of a lot other ways that, and this isn't picking on anybody here, but, maybe more so commissions have passed where we've wasted money, and I don't think the BCA, believe it or not, is one of those areas. So, I would like to continue to support them. If the will of this commission, depending on how everyone feels about it, because that's the big number on the paper. Let's not, aside from the ADC, I would be okay with a reduction, but I don't think that we should eliminate that funding, because I've seen what they can do, and I've seen how important it is to not just those find individuals that were brought in to show us what they do or what they're doing with their program. But anyway, I'll stop talking because I'm just jabbering, but I don't know if the answer is that we go through it. I know the Eli training is beneficial because I watch those leaders come back to the city of Palm Bay with a new vigor and a new, take charge and how do I manage my employees, and the cost is so small. Lead Brevard, I know that they do a fine job too, but I know they used to run Eli training. So maybe if Lead Brevard, and maybe they will regret bringing this to the meeting now, is willing to cut their funding, maybe we bring them in and have them work with our current county staff that's handling the Eli program, and we wrap that funding into there or pull the funding out if Lead Brevard is primarily volunteers. Because frankly, and I appreciate what Lead does, and I've seen their stuff on Facebook, and they have a lot of events and stuff. What I hear from is the Eli training. I hear that from other managers. I hear that from other staff members. I hear that is they don't say, oh, Lead is great. They say Eli is great. So and that's a much smaller cost. Lean Sigma 6, I know that saves money because I've watched that firsthand and seen how, for such a small cost, you're able, I think Mr. Witten discussed that pretty well in the meeting previous to this. So, and that's just one area. They do a lot of other things because I think that's something that we're not quite done yet as far as our building department. The EDC, again, we can talk about each one. I guess it depends on where we're headed. I don't want to waste anybody's time if there's 3 votes here just to leave everything the way it is, or do we want to make everybody uncomfortable and go through each one? I can do that too, whatever the will of the chair.
Good, put it on me.
But that would be my suggestion. If
It's okay, I got big shoulders, I'll do it.
basically, Commissioner Barfield said he was okay with it. Commissioner Pritchett said she was okay with it. So if you want to itemize items, then I would suggest that we move forward, or if you're okay with the way that it sits now, let's move forward, so we're just not wasting anybody's time. I guess that would be my...
All right, I would like to just weigh in on some just thoughts as I was watching all these people come up. We had a couple of people said that they support fixing roads, but largely roads don't get a whole lot of respect. They're not sexy. And if every one of you has your favorite, and we've already heard up here that some of us have our favorites, then it's kind of like everybody realizes we need to fix roads or thinks that we need to fix roads. I'll take that back because I don't think there's a lot of affection for roads. But in the back of their mind, they think that we need to fix roads. But nobody wants to cut. Everybody has their favorites. You might favor, I'm not going to use a program, but you might like green, you might like red. And so, we're not cutting anything with green, we're not cutting anything with red, so what are we going to cut? And Mr. DeBay, your numbers here with all the things, and you've put an awful lot of effort into this, and I want to commend you for that. You come up with $1,800,000 if we were to go along with every single one. That's not going to fix many roads, but it would help fund some raises for employees. I think that would be a positive.
This is just the first workshop, to be clear. I've got another 1.8 in the second one.
Okay. But when we really need to be looking at $10 to $15 million a year for about 10 years. So we're not going to get there with this. So basically what we're doing is we're chasing pennies when we really need dollars. So that's problematic in itself.
We're going to see a revenue increase this year. When you add the revenue increase this year plus the deferred 1.5, we can get to, if you're really serious about...
Well, the revenue increase that we're getting is going to bring us up to the 50 miles that we need. We're not touching the 350 miles that, or $350 million that we need.
Even if we hit the cap, right? It's 130 million base. So if the cap is, 1%, you've got $1.5 million right there, and then everything else is new construction. As you pointed out many times, the cap doesn't apply to that. We could see $3 or $4 million off of that. If you cut $6-7 million, you add the 3 or 4 of new money, not new taxes, but new revenue that is coming in. If you're serious about that, if you're honestly, intellectually, and conservatively serious about this, you can hit that $10 to $15 million. It's going to be very tough. You have to make hard decisions, and we haven't. We haven't. we haven't made the tough decisions. I don't expect us to make the tough decisions. I just think they need to be talked about. And that is
comes back
why
to what I
that-
was saying about everybody has their favorite, and
I
so
don't.
It's kind. Well, you don't. Okay. Everybody else in here does. So it's kind of like everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. It's the same thing. Everybody wants to say, cut something else, but don't cut what I like. Don't kill me, but I want you to have heaven. It's a tough road to hoe. I don't know. Mr. Whitten, do we have any clue what our cap might be this year?
You know,
It's 1/10 of 1% this past year.
I feel like I should read something out of the charter before I talk there, but everybody seems to know about millages and new construction. And so new construction last year, which was a very good year for us, was 2.2 million. You know, so the numbers associated with new construction are greatly exaggerated, at least for the general countywide. You know, as we go into budget development, the cap focuses in on the CPI, and I think Jill has said that that's 1.26 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And so the calculation of what you get just by virtue of the cap in new construction is very complicated. But new construction last year for the current fiscal year, and the best year that we've seen in a long, long time, was only 2.2 million. So I don't think you're going to see a tremendous growth in new construction next year, because there are some things that are obviously going on with the how that was calculated previously. But just to say you have just as good a year next year as you've had this current year, then I think you're looking at the total increase was 4.8. That includes the 2.2 of new construction there. So that's all in. And remember that everybody's vying for the general revenue. When I say everybody, charter officers, including the sheriff, including, again, all of the charter officers, all of the things that you have to fund with new construction. And we've given you some small increases over time. Just for instance, the Central Florida Regional Planning Council fee is going up by $25,000, and so you're going to have those increases. I'm not sure that we know right now where FRS, where workers' comp, where all of those things that are expenses associated with running an organization of this size are. So right now we know that the CPI associated with the charter cap is 1.26%. Where new construction will be, you won't know until the property appraiser gives you the first guess, and that's again June 1st is when we get the preliminary figures from the property appraiser.
So, as I said, 1.26%, and I don't know where they get this CPI from, because you can just go to the grocery store and look at a jar of peanut butter that used to be $2.50 is now $7. I don't get where they come up with those kind of numbers, but those are the numbers that we have to live with. And every one of these programs is worthwhile. I don't think anybody in here would say that they're not. So then the question is, are we going to be the bad guys and take 20% of this and 10% of that, or 20% across the board, and come up with some kind of number? Are we going to be able to fund raises for our directors? Are we going to be able to fund raises for our employees, our firefighters? Are we going to be able to fix roads?
Again, it comes down to this. Do we want to, and some speakers said, do we want to impact our quality of life? I mean, there comes a point, there's a balancing point. You know, you can keep cutting and cutting, and I think we have cut. Prior to you and I being here, it was, what, 500 people cut. They had to cut it down tremendously. And you know what? It comes a point where you're going to cut more, and you're going to cut into the bone, resulting in where you're affecting the quality of life. And the arts are big. Economic development is critical. We can't let off on that now. We cannot. We have to keep pushing forward and building the economy around here. Sure, we have roads or issues, but we're paving roads. Now we're going to get 55 miles a year. So to think we can come up with 50 million, 100 million, whatever, quickly, it's not going to happen. Unless we really cut something so far that we won't have the people coming in this county or won't be here. So
But if we don't address that backlog of 150 million and the $200 million of capacity,
I agree.
Those numbers will continue to get bigger. They don't get smaller. Again, I always come back to the reference of a leak in your roof. If you don't fix it right away, that $500 repair can easily get to be $10,000 real quickly. And so, do we want to burden these folks out here? Do they want to burden themselves in not supporting cuts and burden them with maybe $600 million worth of repairs 5 years from now? Because every road, and we all know this, but I'll repeat it for those of you that haven't heard it before, every road that could be paved for $50,000, when it gets to the point where it needs to be rebuilt, that road's going to cost 5 to 7 times more. So you're just opening yourself up for a lot more debt going forward. So at what point do you put on the brakes and you say, this is what we've got to do? And if we can cut $10 million a year, that's what we're going to have to do. If we can't get there, then what's the answer? So this is the heavy burden we have to bear.
Mr. Chair, I think what we did in this budget, though, we got adequate paving so that we're not creating any more into the backlog inventory. I think that number from the amount we did is going to stabilize now. We stabilize it. I think that was the presentation. Stockton?
Yes, ma'am. If you get to the 55 and eventually get to the 61, remember on that matrix we showed you that you actually are arresting the backlog. And so...
But the roads the bad roads continue to get worse. So that's the increase.
And it takes 5 or 6 years, and oh, by the way, that's without any new roads added to our system, which we know we're going to have growth. I mean, it's
the roads, as if you remember the pie chart that John Denninghoff showed us, for each year that you're not repaving the roads that need to be repaved, they start falling into the rebuild capacity.
So this amount got us to where we're keeping everything repaved. It took us to the 2020 numbers today by
I'm actually looking at it. So
renegotiating the bonds.
I'm not recalling it from memory. I'm looking at it. So
Yeah.
if you did, the estimated backlog without the proposal by the end of 2022 was 800 miles of road. Because you all have agreed to and given direction to staff to do the funding plan, that backlog is reduced to 728. So whereas it would have grown to 800, it goes from, and he gave the current backlog as a 734, so it's actually reduced because he actually gets to a point where he's over the 55 per year. It goes from 734 to 728. Without the proposal, it would have gone from 734 to 800. So the proposal was all about putting a cap or lid on the backlog and not allowing that to grow any further. Again, obviously, as you all have discussed, you still have the backlog. So you still have the issue.
And the capacity issues, and we're talking 700 plus miles out of 1,100.
So we kind of froze the backlog inventory with this proposal. So we still got it. We're going to have to address it, but it's going to cost a fortune. Doing this also, we saved $31.5 million over the next few years by not creating more of a backlog because we're doing the repaving. So that's why I keep stressing what we've done with this. It's quite an accomplishment, and I do think we're going to have to work on it. But I think to get there, I don't think we're going to get it by squishing pennies here out of things that are already squished. I think we're going to have to generate revenues, and the only way to generate revenues are new businesses, people moving in, or to get some type of new service taxes, which I don't think is going to be popular with this board for this year for a vote. But we're going to have to generate a large sum of money down the road, or the charter cap's going to have to go away so we can function like other government entities do. They're able to take care of these basic needs. But if you guys hadn't been through the last 6 years of all the tremendous cuts, we would have to do something, but you have cut for 6 years. So I really don't think we have a spending problem. I think we have a revenue problem, because we're in a time of growth in our county, and we need to create opportunities and jobs and revenues.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Barfield, you have the floor.
You know, but we can't, I mean, we've addressed the community-based organizations, and we cut a lot there for the future. A lot of it affecting the elderly, affecting those who can't really speak up for themselves, a lot of them. So now we're looking at also, based on cutting the health department, we're looking at impacting the community with infants, homeless people, all the other issues we have. And we just cannot pave roads on the back of the poor and those who can't fend for themselves. So we got to be careful of that, because these are our citizens, and we just can't do that. And so, I mean, it's a tough decision, but we have to also consider who we're impacting. And I just believe that, we're going to have to do as much as we can, cut as much, or look at new revenues. We have made a major impact with Mr. Whitten with bringing up where we can actually pave 55 miles of roads a year. If you remember, what was it last year? We were 8 miles of roads. So, we just have to be careful on what we cut and when and how.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. DeVay.
When I knocked on doors, when it came to roads, no one said, hey, stop the backlog or stem the bleeding. They wanted the roads fixed. No, we saw those charts. I asked the one question, Mr. Denninghoff, if we continue at 55 or increase to 61, at one point we'll be on par where we have fixed roads. His response, and I remember it to a T, is, I can't see that far in the future. I won't be alive. So by saying that we increased it from 8 to 61 miles, that may make for a good 6.5 by 11 flyer when you're running for re-election, but it certainly won't do anything to help get us to that where we have an adequate infrastructure. What I have done is spend, and my staff, and quite frankly, the staff of the county, getting many answers, not as much help from certain executive offices where questions go to die and still are there, sitting for weeks on end. But that being said, have itemized. I mean, that was the charge you made. I mean, and I'd like to discuss. I mean, it's up to your discretion, but the county manager brought in Foundations for Government, my region. I appreciate you coming, Mr. Stewart. $25,000. Here's my question. Have you spoken with Mr. Stewart? Do you know Mr. Stewart? Has that organization, I mean, we're talking about measurable change, and yes, we have folks up here that if we cut services, there will be a direct impact. My question is, the first time we're seeing these people shouldn't be when we're talking about decreasing funds. I mean, when you look at what they're talking about, it's to support the Central Florida delegation. I like our Central Florida delegation up in Tallahassee. They don't have a registered lobbyist. I looked it up. I was part of the Central Florida delegation. I've never heard of the Foundation for building my regional membership. I'd like to know, what exactly we'd got. I don't know that anyone else here had done the same. National Association of County Membership. I mean, it sounds good, but
Well, how about if we do this? I'm all for looking at this, because I think it's an exercise that's necessary on our part. We can't, if as Commissioner Pritchett says that we have a revenue problem, we don't know that until we do the numbers. I have a strong suspicion I already know the answer to this, but I think we owe it to ourselves and our community that we go through these numbers and any others that anybody has and see what we can glean from this and make some painful cuts and then see where we are and go from there.
I will fully support Commissioner Pritchett bringing up any and all revenue increases. I think that just as these cuts need to be discussed, so do fee or tax increases if you think that that is best for Brevard County. I think that you were duly elected, and not bringing it up is doing a disservice. So I will, you know, fully, whether you write it or whether the county attorney writes it, I certainly will look forward to not only discussing that at the commission, but hopefully at workshops as we go forward, so we can find out what these, you know, what a...
Well, you're right, everything's on the table.
Absolutely.
I said that one,
I'm not
you
here to
guys took
stifle
office.
I'm not here to stifle any discussion on that. I just want to talk about, okay, what are those revenue increases that, let's be specific. Is it the 3 cents on, you know, tax on gas? Are we talking about another discretionary half cent if we can do that? I honestly don't know. Do we raise an impact fee? You know, there's a lot of potential, you know, fee and tax increases out there, and I certainly do want to discuss, because not only do I have cuts here as we'll go forward, I think there are some staffing that needs to be increased. I think we heard that the medical examiner is really facing some severe issues, and you saw that that they had to go for overtime, which I called about, and goodness gracious, they're giving us a great deal as far as I'm concerned with the number of, I don't know if you refer to them as patients or, you know, decedents, there we go, thank you, a medical professional here, that they're working. So, but I do think it's doing a disservice by not only the folks that showed up here to advocate on behalf of the organization, but the constituents that can't be here to discuss these as well as, you know, these as well as other ones. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you know, there's a lot of county employees that have cooler iPhones than what I have, and that are paid for with general fund dollars, which, you know, the more you dig into this, the more a little, you know, disappointing this is to me. So those are the type of things, you know.
Okay, well, let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll roll up our sleeves
I
and
make a
start
statement
doing-
before you do
Sure,
real quick.
go ahead.
I do want to look for alternative revenue, but I don't want the word getting out that I'm trying to raise property taxes, because you get me slammed at home. And
No, I didn't mean to. I'm
know
sorry.
you
I didn't mean to.
I know
I
you
didn't mean
didn't.
to. Or any taxes or
I
fees.
thought I better do that
Sorry,
real quick.
sorry.
No,
Well,
no, sir, I don't think it's on purpose.
just for the purposes of where we are, I think we just have to agree as a board that everything's got to be considered, whether
Yeah,
we go there or not.
We do. I knocked on doors too, and what was interesting to me, everybody's mad at you guys when you're talking about raising property taxes to do the river, but they weren't as frustrated by the time we negotiated around to doing a tax assessment on the ballot, that they're all going to vote for it. So I think just from knocking on a lot of doors too, I think me and you both knocked on a ton of them, people weren't as, they didn't have as much heartburn about possibly service taxes as much as they did just raising their private home taxes. So from that, I think it might be something we might need to consider, that we all pay for services we use. And they were concerned about the river, jobs, and my district wants a Panera. So,
Well, before we take a break, let me just touch on, you just touched on this. When the lagoon was talked about and bandied about this time last year, initially we had started with the idea of a property tax. And I said, I'm not for a property tax. I don't think that we should burden the property tax owners with the sole responsibility of fixing that river. So we adjusted and we went with the sales tax. Now, when the referendum, the wording for the referendum was put together, there was a poll taken throughout the county. And the results of that poll, I know my district approved of the lagoon tax by 66%. I think the lowest was your district, and it was like 54%. The other three districts were somewhere between 54 and 66. Now, here's the catch. After the report was, after the first question was asked, the second question was the same wording, except that they added taking 1 penny out of that 6 cents and putting it toward roads. My district went from 66 to 61%. Your district went down to, I think, 49%. And everybody else's district went down as well. Roads are not sexy, guys. People will fix, it's the same 6 cents. But when you wanted to take 1 penny out for roads, about an average per district was 5% of the people said, no way. So roads just don't get it. I mean, they just
And I
don't.
get that they're not sexy, and I don't mean to interrupt, I thought
No,
I think you were done, but I get that they're not sexy, but when I knocked on doors for a couple of terms in Palm Bay, and again for commission, my roads are pretty crummy, and a lot of those are municipal roads, but that's what I heard. My suspension, my flat tires, my cars. Go on Facebook
And
and
we're
look
going to
at...
get there. If
look
we
at
don't
some
do
of that
something, 5
anger.
years from now, we're going to be that way in the whole county.
And that's okay, I guess, to each person. It depends on where, if you're on the water, the lagoon's going to be more important. You know, if you live in a nice place on the water, but if you live in the depths, I call it the deep south of Palm Bay, you're complaining when your car's, you know, trucking down the road. So I get, it may not be a sexy topic, and that's always a joke that I always said too, but it is our function. You know, and I realize there is that balance with quality of life, and everybody does have their favorites, but I'm not afraid to, you know, bite the bullet and say, well, I am no more entitled to this favorite, personal favorite, but at the same time, I realize I have a responsibility to my constituency. If this is what they want, I mean, I don't know how many emails you guys got, but I have well over 100. I'm seriously really grateful that I have several boxes of emails, because at least I can allocate this stuff together, but... So, you know, it's what's important to I sometimes have to learn to put some of my personal feelings aside on issues, as long as I'm not compromising not only what I stood for, and the promises I made when I ran for office, but that I'm not compromising myself in the interim. So.
Okay, let's take a 10-minute break.